this, many have this notion that volunteering is the same as internship.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start from there. What is the difference and what exactly is volunteerism?
Yeah, I usually use a quick one on that. And first of all, I want to say thank you for hosting me to actually talk about this thing. It's one topic that is never talked about largely across the country. And so up to that point, so many people do not know where internship ends and volunteerism begins. But back to your question, the truth is volunteerism is a social behavior. But internship is a different thing altogether, because this is knowledge acquisition. You want to qualify for some particular career, and so you are having your internship to do training on yourself to get ready for the job market and things like that. Sometimes I don't know whether there is any other spirit behind it, but in volunteerism there is always spirit behind it, and that is why we say it's a social behavior. This is something someone would still want to do even when they are fully employed and earning good monies there. But because it's a social behavior, this is something they still want to go out there and do without expecting anything for themselves as a major gain.
Okay, so it being a social behavior, it has to be an act that comes from the heart.
Exactly.
All
There is
right.
a spirit driving it.
Okay, so is it, as I've just read in my introduction, would you declare volunteerism as an act that is only for community service delivery?
What we're saying as volunteer involving organization, society, basically this is a network of member organizations. And what we are saying is, number one, we say volunteerism is a social behavior, and on that, it is a catalyst. It has been used by countries and even globally, and that is why you see major organizations like Kenya Red Cross, United Nations Volunteers, those are all our members in the network, and their contribution is not doubtable to the development of the country and to communities. So it is not just a social behavior to make people happy and jump around, but it is a social behavior that is used to develop the country and somehow sustainably.
So for one end of this, of course, now that we've established that it's a social behavior, meaning it involves different parties.
Yes.
So there's the party that the country is supposed to benefit, and of course those who are being volunteered to also benefit. So what benefits does it have to the volunteer himself or herself?
Thank you. Number one, it would have been very good, and I think we have started on a right note, as I can see and I can say, because going forward we might even be able to involve volunteers themselves and people who have passed through volunteerism to also speak about how they feel. Number one, it gives you a different feeling, because most of the people I can talk about who we recruited as volunteers in different organizations across board have ended up in a place where some of them says, I want to be here. I am just okay, because before I joined volunteerism, everything was about me. But after joining volunteerism and working with a certain organization on certain issues around that affect the country and the communities in particular, I feel like life is not all about me.
It gives you a sense of
appreciation. So it gives you that sense of wanting to do more for the people and to the community. That is one.
All right. Now, Meshach, I just need us to get this a bit clear. Now, matters of volunteering, one should not expect to get any payment.
Yes.
All right. So where is it that, where do you draw the line?
Yes. I think that is one of the very common questions that are being asked everywhere.
I'm glad it wasn't my number one question.
I'm glad you have as well brought it today. We from the background, which I said earlier, a social behavior. So one thing is, it is not a category of a person. Volunteers are not category of a person. So that we may say volunteerism is about work without pay. No, we are not saying that. What we are saying, it's a social behavior. But as an organization, because you are organized, you have structures, you have a way of doing things, including your policies that are running your finances and everything. You will realize that when you dispatch volunteers from your offices to go to the field for something, they will need transportation, they will need lunch, they will need other things, essential things that will help them carry on their work well. And also sometimes volunteerism should be appreciated, even though the person doing the work do not expect anything, but the people who benefit from the work sometimes would want to appreciate. Like for example, last year, 2017, we held at the Sarovo Stanley, we had what is called International Volunteers Day and VOYA, this is Volunteer of the Year Awards. So this was attended by the Cabinet Secretary herself, Madam Kandie, and many other dignitaries, just to appreciate volunteers and give them awards. Those are not monetary, but they help them understand that the work they're doing across the country is appreciated. So when it comes to having full-time volunteers, of course, you know they will have to live in a house, they will have to use transport wherever they want to go to discharge their duties, and they will have to dress and eat. So when whatever is given to them, whether from organization X or Y, it is not called salary, it is allowance, just to help them facilitate their work so that they can give the country the kind of result that is expected.
Okay, just allow me to ask this question,
Yes.
Mashak. Would you place priests and sheikhs from the mosques and the Christians respectively as volunteers? Or is that a different case?
No,
And imams?
we always say volunteerism is in different categories.
All right.
We have volunteers who are involved within an organization, and then we have individuals who are basically volunteers out there, but they are not attached to any organization.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
And with that said, right there on having different structures when it comes to volunteerism, how many hours should one work as a volunteer? Is that just completely bizarre according to you?
Not really. I would say there is no standard hour that is across board. It depends on the organization. You'll find, for example, let me use a few organizations in my network, under our network, like Kenya Red Cross. They have their way of involving volunteers, and they involve volunteers in different categories, because some of them are actually professionals who have qualified beyond any reasonable doubt on specific fields. So the way they are engaged by that particular organization would be different from other volunteers who are also engaged from the background of having no specific qualification, but maybe are still important to the work that is being done by the organization. So when you go full-time, for example, like UNV, you will be like an employee in terms of the man hours you're putting in, although you are a volunteer. If you decide to go to another organization and say, I have 1 hour every week, sometimes the organization will realize that what you're bringing is very key, and so they want to bring you on board on that particular 1 hour you are able to give.
All right. And now let's get down to business. And there's one thing that many Kenyans did not know or do not know about, which is the National Volunteerism Policy.
Yes.
Just kindly define for us what it is before we even delve in deeper.
Yes. I would say in a very few words, the National Volunteerism Policy, this document we have. It's
actually a whole book.
Yeah, it is.
It's a whole booklet. All right.
It is. This is a government document.
Yes.
Whenever policy has been done, it is a government document. But there are stakeholders around it. So as volunteer involving organization society, this is our number one priority, to see to it that government implements. But in this policy, these are just the guidelines of how volunteerism should happen in our country. Because we have already recognized earlier that volunteerism contributes a lot to the GDP, and volunteerism is a catalyst that is used globally also to promote development, sustainable development. So in a country like Kenya, who is growing, we really need a policy, and that is the whole background of this booklet. So it's a document that guides how volunteerism happens, is done, and volunteers are engaged, how they are appreciated, how the government involve organizations who are hiring volunteers, and things like that. So that is all that is defined in this. Just like you said, before we go into the details, that is what the policy is
all right,
about.
and maybe now getting into the details, which I think you already have done.
If you say so.
Yeah.
There is so much in it.
There's so much. I mean, I'm shocked it's a whole booklet.
Yeah, it
Now,
requires.
now getting getting deeper into the national volunteerism policy.
Yeah.
What are the different policies that guide and guard volunteers that are actually very, very key?
Yes. Right now in the country, the policies that I can mention that are there are not at the national level. We only have policies in different organizations. That is one. So Kenya Red Cross has their policy. United Nations volunteers have their policy. And VSO have their policy, and many other organizations, including organizations who might not, as at now, be members of the VIO society. And then there are counties which have gone a little bit ahead of others. For example, Makueni County Government, they have done their policy at the county level. So that is a policy that is there. And then the National Volunteerism Policy, which was done, led by the Ministry of East Africa Labor and Social Protection. So we are just talking about these policies at the individual organizations level, but coming to the national level, we are only having one document, the National Volunteerism Policy. The rest would be county. If other counties would come up with their policies, that would be expected.
And very quickly, why is it very important for every volunteer out there to know about these policies, the volunteerism policies?
Thank you very much. It is very important for our volunteers to understand this document in details because, like I said earlier, it is the document that provides guidelines on how volunteerism should happen in the country. So if a volunteer understands, then organizations might not infringe on their rights because the policy provides the guidelines on how volunteers are engaged and how organizations are working with them. So it is important for organization, employees, and it is important for volunteers themselves, and it is important for the society who are being served by the acts of volunteerism to understand, because the policy even talks about the beneficiaries. In this whole act of volunteerism, there is a beneficiary down there. They need to understand what the policy provides when volunteerism happens in our society. What should we expect from volunteers? What should we expect from organizations involving them?
All right, and as we shut this interview down, Mr. Mashuk, maybe we can now slightly talk about the Good Deeds.
Yes, yes, Good Deeds Day is a global movement of doing good. And it is something that I would say an initiative from a family foundation in Israel. So this is a tool we are using to spur volunteerism, to improve it, to make people understand what volunteerism is all about. So Good Deeds Day is just this day around April. Just like when we go to volunteerism, in the first week of December, we celebrate the National Volunteerism Week, which is provided in the policy. And on the 5th of December is an International Volunteers Day. in the UN calendar. So when it comes to good deeds, April is its peak. So we just say in April, we celebrate all the good deeds that we do, like what Ebro TV does, like what we do in the organization, and other Kenyans. Remember, Kenyans do a lot of good things.
Yes, they do.
But they never get at the national level to be seen. So it's a fun fair, it's a celebration. So this year, we are hosted by the county government of Nairobi. We are having the Makueni County government, the Volunteer Involving Organization Society, the ministry, and Good Deeds Israel. And companies are also part of it, like SBI and many others. So the celebration will be happening on 15th of April at the City Hall Way. The county government is going to block a whole street for that event. And as we speak, we are expecting quite a number of dignitaries led by the governor. They are yet to confirm, but we have already sent invitations, and we think it is going to be a big thing. So it's just a tool we are using to tell Kenyans that volunteerism is a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Meshach.
Thank you.
That